Alright, welcome back. In today's lesson, we're going to cover 3 opening patterns that you can use in your games, or at least know about them for when your opponents play them against you. Before we start, just a quick introduction. My name is Philip, and I'm a 2100 FIDE rated player from New Zealand, and the reason I make these videos is to help you improve your chess. So let's get right into it. The first one we're going to look at is the Benko Gambit. And this is one of my favorites as black, because you get a really dynamic position, but we're going to look at it from white's perspective. So d5 and b5 is the Benko Gambit. You're giving up a pawn. The only good way to challenge a gambit is to accept it, so white naturally takes the pawn, and black typically plays a6 here, with the idea that after b takes a6, bishop takes a6, black just has, for the price of a pawn, he's got a very open queen side. He's got open A and B files. He'll fianchetto his bishop and have pressure down the dark squares, and just have a very dynamic position overall. And I've won some nice games with this opening with the Benko Gambit. I typically find it easier to play these types of positions with black personally. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. However, what we're going to look at is what happens if white plays b6, because this is actually a problem for black. So let's see why. After queen takes, a4 is the move, and that's the one we're looking at today. Now let's say play continues naturally with d6. The idea for white is to play a5, kicking the queen. So again, let's take a look at the most obvious moves first. Queen b4 check, knight here, and then if play continues g6, white plays rook a4. The only square for the queen is back to b7. And after e4, let's take a look at this position. Compared to, compared to this position, where black has a very nice open position, this is a much more closed, restricted position. So black no longer has that closed, has that open a file. The queen is in the way of the bishop and any potential rook on b8. When the knight comes to d7, it can't go to the natural b6 square because of that pawn. And overall, black's position is just a lot more cramped, less dynamic, and white will just continue developing naturally and have a fine position and a slight advantage. Okay, so what happens if we play, so obviously in this position, probably better is just to drop the queen back to c7, but let's say, what if black decides to not take the pawn? So we've just played b6. What if black plays something like d6? Well, white's going to play a4 anyway, and after queen takes b6, a5, we reach the same position with the same idea for white. So, can black play anything to stop white playing a4, a5? The answer is yes, but that involves playing a5 themselves and creating this massive gaping outpost on b5. And white, after a few moves, let's say knight c3, d6 here, just natural play, check, bishop d7 here. White has just plugged that gap and plugged that b file, and black has no play on the queen side whatsoever. So black, by playing the Benko Gambit, is signaling, hey look, I want to fight and I want to take you on the queen side. And by playing that maneuver, you essentially kill all of black's ideas in that position, and instead of giving black a very dynamic position by taking on a6 and taking on b5, you can get a really solid position with white by playing a4. So that's one pattern to know. I think it's a really cool one. The next one, we're just going to cover it very rapid fire because it's quite basic, but it's still important to know if you don't know it already. And it happens a lot in these types of positions like the classic French advanced defense, advanced variation of the classic French defense. c5, c3, knight c6. Black is just pressuring that d4 base of the pawn chain, and queen to b6. Now black is probably thinking, you know, I've got decent pressure on d4. Now if you don't know your openings, you might think that bishop d3 loses that d4 pawn immediately, but what you're not noticing is the discovered check, bishop b5, and after this, you know, we trade, black loses that queen. And the reason I want to show you guys this is because this type of discovered check from bishop from d3 to bishop to b5 happens a lot more than you think, especially when you're analyzing lines where the queen is the last piece to take a central pawn, whether it's white or black. So anytime you're analyzing this type of a position where you're going takes, doing a hikaru, takes, and you end up with the queen taking, or any piece really, but especially if it's the queen, you always have to look out, is there a check at the end of it on b5, or with a castled queen, castled king on h7. So that's one to look out for. Now, how would black prepare in order to be able to take it with no check? Well, the answer is by playing bishop d7. And now if you think, play it in your head, bishop d5, bishop b5 is no longer a check, so now black is legitimately threatening to take that pawn. You know, you can take the pawn here and continue play this way if you like, or as white you could play what's called the Milner-Barry gambit as well, which is you can castle and give that pawn away on d4 and claim that your advantages, your pieces are out, your king's castled, you've got king safety, and you play for the initiative and for the attack as white, but it's a bit risky. I haven't had much success with it as white, even though I've tried a couple of times, or a few times. Before we get to the last one, actually, there is one more theme, one more pattern I want to show you guys, because again, it's important to know. What happens if black tries to change the move order around by, instead of playing queen to b6, but being sneaky and playing bishop b7 first, bishop d7 first, still threatening bishop queen to b6. Man, I'm mixing up my squares, eh? Bishop to d7, queen to b6. Okay. So what if white here decides to play bishop b5? Can you guys spot the winning move for black here? It's the very simple knight takes e5. Because that bishop is undefended, if white takes that, black's just won the e5 pawn. And alternatively, if white takes with check, the knight drops back and black is up a pawn again. And you'd be surprised how many people fall for these types of tricks. So the punchline with this is anytime, even if it's a bishop to g5, dark squared bishop, or a bishop to b5, anytime you move your bishop out in this direction and there's another bishop on the other side, always either look for the knight takes e5 or the knight f6 takes d5, depending on the position. Tactics, because a lot of the time you might be losing a pawn on the spot, so be careful when you play moves like bishop to b5. All right, last but not least, and this is definitely my favorite one, so if you stuck around, subscribe, like the channel, like the video, share it with your friends. But this one is knight ge2 in the King's Indian defense. I have won so many games with this opening because a lot of people don't know about it. So I might be revealing trade secrets here, but I hope I don't play any of you guys in chess.com. So knight ge2. Okay, why does that work so well? Well, the main move is knight to f3. But the reason this works so well is because you go knight g3, and then let's say play continues like a standard King's Indian. e5, d5. Sorry, it's black's move. Knight b d7, bishop e2, knight to, no, let's go a5, preparing knight to c5 without b4 kicking it out. h4, h5, and this happens in so many games. Bishop g5, knight c5. And that, I'll give that a question mark, or even a double question mark, because, again, can you see the winning move here for white? Bishop takes h5. Takes, oops, not on. Knight takes. And that is a pinned knight. So how does this, why and how does this work so well? Well, very quickly, the obvious bishop to g4 doesn't work because you go check, takes, and you pick up the bishop and you're just a couple of pawns up with a winning attack. So that's not good at all for black. So what does black do instead? Well, black wants to get out of the pin. So queen e8 doesn't work, or moving the queen doesn't work, because then you just lose the knight instantly, because it's attacked twice and defended only just by that bishop on g7. So you move your knight back, but then white just goes queen f3. And again, you cannot get out of the pin. If you play queen e8, you get out of the pin, you lose your knight. So how do you break this as black? Well, you can't. And white's just going to continue by playing rook h3, rook g3, maybe castle and queenside, and eventually trading some of these pieces. The rook is going to be, the rook is going to be on that g file. The queen has pressure possibly coming to h5, and white just has a winning attack. So that is one of my favorite openings to play as white, especially in blitz games, because people just don't know about it, and the win percentage has got to be around 80% for me with these types of positions. Even if black stops you from sacrificing, so let's say even if black plays something like queen e8 here, you have a great position as white, and just by continuing normally queen d2, castling queenside or kingside, doesn't really matter, you still have a very solid position as white, and good chances to win the game. So those are 3 opening patterns. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you watched till the end, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.